in our budget monies for some positions that are currently vacant and they're on hold. So as we get some experience, we may, we're going to keep those positions held until we see clear that we can hire those people. So we feel we're protected associated with making that decision. And then we also have taken some money out of the Medicare, the $25,000 that we had put in, again, for the same purpose. So that totals $210,000. And rather than divide that like we have been in the 30-60 cents, the town budget currently is in a state of balance. And it's in a state of balance for the following reason. We are running, our budget is coming in at 3% below last year's budget number. And out of that, we are budgeting almost $291,000 exactly for snow and ice, which would come off of the recap sheet if it wasn't covered. This is the balance of the snow and ice deficit is $725,000. So we're covering that completely, within the budget number, the 3% plus, the divide of the number of the town and school. So I can say tonight that $210,000 is going directly to the school number. They can add that to the latest, the number that the finance director handed out on our Friday financial planning team meeting.
So we would add $210,000 to the available funds number. Steve Kellogg, we're using the same number. We had $22,296,875.
Yes.
To which you're adding $210,000. And can you subtract that from the budget number we just voted on?
No, we just added available funds.
Right.
So if there's a 22,506,875.
Right, then compare that new available funds to our new budget number.
And it gives us the Senate budget deficit would be $751,985. The Governor's House 1 budget deficit would be $464,992. And the House Ways and Means would be $330,075 deficit.
So we're the house.
Yeah, except we don't have the choice, right?
So we're still at, worst case scenario right now is a $751,985 deficit.
Well, thank you.
Thank
you to Sean and Greg and any others that participated this afternoon.
I would further comment that I wouldn't be surprised if there were additional changes even before we get to June 8th. And then after that, there still has to be some settling out of budget numbers.
I think a lot's going to depend on May, when they look at the May revenues.
I mean, the sad part is that there's no, the frustration of clarity on how the stimulus is going to work and when it's going to be available, how much we should be using.
Anywhere from $330,000 to $665,000, or even $752,000. Yeah, around
Yeah, okay.
90.
Yeah.
And then there's the room tax, the meals tax, the option that's in the Senate budget, I believe, for the town to increase the meals tax, although we don't expect that to be a windfall. But, I mean, these things are up in the air. And
Right. And when you
chances are that they'll be up in the air on June 8th.
Right, but we can't take the Senate room tax money and the House Ways and Means budget. Because, we can't take the income and apply it towards
No,
snow
and
deficit.
by the way,
So,
we're using the Senate budget, it's the
We're-
lowest budget,
right,
it's the most conservative at this time.
right.
We don't know what kinds of compromises are going to be made, and if they're made favorably, we'll adjust.
So based on all of the recap and the available funds, we're leaning with the Senate budget, and that's a $751,985 deficit in the school budget. And you can tell we've already tweaked every dime shuffled money around that we'll probably get caught short on, and went through level one cuts, which were significant, yet they did not touch the classroom, which, two things we have not done is cut classroom teachers or eliminated programs. Certainly with the $752,000 deficit, we can't hold that line any longer. Something has got to go. So, you know, I know that there may be some room tax money coming in. It's not going to close a gap that big. We need a solution. We need to put it in play by June 8th. Even though well past June 8th, they'll still be settling the state budget and stimulus monies and federal monies. We'll still be working out, but we need to come to a balanced budget solution by June 8th. Or we have to start letting staff know tomorrow that we intend to lay off. So,
Even if this extra $200,000 that you haven't allocated when stimulus money comes in, it's not likely to be the kind of thing that could offset something in the budget.
That's the way we look at it right now, but I mean, as David said, if they change the wording, but right now they're saying that 50% has to be for investment, strategic use, 50% offset your budget.
I'm not even sure if we would all be in agreement to use the funds in that way, because it postpones the problem to next year when you've dug yourself in deeper. And we have to be able to sustain our salary budget.
There are two costs in this $751,000, $985 deficit. There is money in there that is currently earmarked for step raises for teachers, and that's approximately $275,000. And there's another cost, which, while I'd have to be dragged kicking and screaming to approve it, is $200,000, which would totally gut the athletic department budget and would place the entire athletic program on the backs of parents. So those two amounts of money would not result in any direct teacher reductions, at least at this point, if we took those out of the budget.
400,000.
475,000. However, we're still in the middle of negotiating a contract with teachers, so you know we don't know how that's going to go.
Suggestions? No more questions, just good ideas. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
I do have one more question, and I apologize if it's already been addressed. Just the number one item, another 21 cuts, was the shortened school year. Just explain what that is, what that means.
Back in December, the school committee approved the reduction of the student year currently at 182 days to the state minimum of 180 days. That saves on transportation, and we have also reduced the 2 days of paraprofessional, 60, 64 paraprofessional salaries. So we're going to continue that next year, still at 180 student days.
See, that's one of those items where if you had that other 200,000, what would you do for the kids for the future? Not just the hole that we have next year, but would you put the 2 days back in the calendar so that kids in North Reading went to school 182 days like they have been for the 20 years I've lived here? You know, that's one of those kind of ideas I would use 200,000 for. Okay, so, Deanna.
I'll just ask questions and perhaps been brought up at other meetings before, but where we're talking about all kinds of issues and parents can weigh in. Dr. Tropen, there was a meeting that you held with administrators that was dedicated to ideas that were discussed about changing how North Reading schools look. And what I mean by that, and parents have asked me this question since then, you know, other communities have gone through the K through 2, 3 through 5, you know, changing things around, and I know that you've talked about that, and I know you've also said that you don't feel that there's significant savings. I just wish you would address that while we're all talking about these issues.
Earlier in the asked the principals, administrators to go off and look at reorganization to see are there ways that we could organize our schools differently, still maintain a certain level of quality, but to also achieve some budget savings. The way that we thought that that would be possible would be to look at such things as administrative costs, support. If you have a special teacher going from between one building and another building, could you focus it on one building and save time? So the principals developed 4 or 5 different scenarios. When you plug in all of the costs and you come out and say, what kind of savings does it make sense to uproot everything? What's your break-even point? It's the same kind of question. Well, how much of a savings is worth it before you are in the point where it isn't worth it? So the only, believe it or not, the only reorganization would be to centralize our pre-K, and then it comes down to an issue of space. And the only space that we felt we could reasonably accommodate that pre-K program would be here at the middle school. But then you have to start thinking about what kind of an investment would you have to make to change restrooms, bathroom facilities, to make them from middle school down to 3- and 4-year-olds. And so the bottom line is, after a lot of work, we've decided the organization that we have based on the facilities, the current facilities, is exactly where we are.
In fact, I think some of the ones we looked at would have cost more money due to transportation issues. I think that preschool one was the only one that might have saved money, and that was before looking at the investment costs here at the middle school.
I mean, the transportation, if there was any way to move our 6th graders back into the elementary schools, then we could centralize busing and not have to run a middle school tier bus unless you pay a fee. Because once you enter 7th grade, there's no requirement at all for transportation. But then it comes down to a question of how can you find among all 3 of our elementary schools anywhere up to 12 additional classrooms, not including any of the specialty areas and in art, music, physical education, special education, and so forth. And the bottom line is, at the Hood School, we have 4 modular classrooms. We have 2 modular classrooms at the Little School. We're at capacity.
I have a question. The elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, they all have parent organizations that do fundraising for the schools, but how come they can't use that fundraising money? I know it's been discussed before, for things like teacher salaries.
That's a very good question. The answer is it's illegal under current state law to apply funds that which should be part of the budget. So you hear from time to time, you may want a school that wants to start a special program that another school doesn't have, or where the parents in that school are not willing to use their money. So it would be not just a question of legality, but it may ultimately be a question of unequal access, that a child in this school might receive a highly differentiated curriculum based on the fact that the parents in that school are funding at a higher level than the parents in another school. A couple of years, well, actually more than a couple of years ago, probably 7 years ago, yeah, thank you, Mr. Webster, the parents did raise money, and it was committed townwide toward using money to purchase textbooks. And that was a one-shot deal. There was a commitment, and a very good commitment from all the parent organizations to pool the money, even though the textbooks were targeted towards specific grade levels that might be different